Sermon title today, This Way or the Highway. And I'll get to that, if I remember, towards the end of the sermon, why I chose that title. Today's sermon, bit more of a personal parting of not wisdom but thoughts from my side, which is probably different from what I normally try to do. I try not to talk too much about myself when it should be about what we find in the Bible. Next year, after Easter sometime, for the 3 months following that, I will take sabbatical leave, 3 months, which I'm entitled to according to my call agreement with the church. After 6 years, I'm entitled to take 3 months of sabbatical leave. Now, I've been here 6 years already, so this is actually the year that I should be taking the sabbatical leave, the 3 months. And I was very tempted to just do it this summer and just plant some grapes and prune some trees and, move rocks around in the backyard. Because I was very tired and I didn't have the energy or the time to really plan something meaningful, so I just wanted to check out and be without any obligations. But initially I asked the council to postpone my sabbatical for another year. And the contract is written in such a way that, as it is supposed to be with sabbaticals, that the sabbatical is not only for the benefit of the minister, an opportunity for renewal, but it is an opportunity for the church and the minister to work together to send the minister on journeys or programs for renewal, but also to allow the church to work on stuff in his or her absence for renewal. And then you have to come back for a year, at least a year, to be with the church, because I think experience was shown that quite often a sabbatical was the opportunity for the minister to go job hunting. In 3 years where you don't have to explain while you're away for the Sunday or stuff like that. So the reason mainly why I tried to amend my calling agreement so that I work another year before I go on the sabbatical was to allow me the opportunity to try and draft a proposal for a grant from the Lilly Endowment. They have tons of money, this endowment, and they, for some reason, want to spend it on ministers and on churches, which is a rare find in the world of big money. And they allow up to $50,000 per sabbatical for the minister and the church. $15,000 max for the church, $35,000 max for the minister. In my terms, that's a lot of money. So I asked the council, let me take it next year, and then I can try and get a draft proposal together, which is due the end of March, which, as you know, is not much time. And I thought afterwards, looking at my schedule and so forth, well, I won't have time for this. But I started working on it, putting stuff on paper, deleting it, try again, delete, and then decided, no, this is not going to work. But in my subconscious, things started to bubble up. Because the proposal is designed, the form that you have to fill in, it's a proposal that should not exceed 23,000 words, which sounds a lot, but it's really not a lot once you start writing and going. It's designed very well. It's designed in such a way that it really interrogates you. It really asks you the questions and push the buttons where you have to confront yourself and do some foundational thinking and some deep seeking about where you are in your life's journey, and where you are in your journey in your relationship with God, and especially where you are in your relationship with the congregation or the church, or the setting where you are serving. And then it also asks some foundational questions. It interrogates you about the church that you are serving. What are the main characteristics? What are the core identities expressed in ministries that you find in this organism or this entity, the church? And after thinking about it for quite a while, I came up with a theme, because one thing that you read in all the notes that they send you to assist you in the drafting of this proposal, they say it's good if you have a theme that carries this thing, a leitmotif that you can say, all right, it's all related to this. And this motive or this theme should be grounded in how you experience yourself and characterize yourself and your ministry, and also how you experience and characterize the church that you are trying to serve. And I came up with this theme, and I will give the title to the proposal: Restoring or Healing the World That Fear of the Other Has Made. Restoring or healing the world that fear of the other has made. When I looked at myself, my family history, on my mother's side, it started in France, just north of Marseille, with a Huguenot family that fled the religious war, went to Amsterdam, and from there in 1688 to the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa. On my father's side, it started in a small town called Bendorf, on the opposite side of the Rhine, where Koblenz is, in Germany. My ancestor from there was a soldier who fought for one of the states, the small German states, or princedoms, against Austria, 7-year war. And when he came back, his whole village was sacked and destroyed, so he said enough, and went to Amsterdam, where he was recruited because he was, according to the literature, strong and healthy, and a tall, good soldier. And they were looking for that kind of people in the Cape of Good Hope as they were starting that colony. So 1763, he arrived in the Cape of Good Hope. And as I progressed thinking about my family history and my personal experiences, looking at my mother and my father, I see there the tendency to always stand in the bridge between people with different opinions and people that are on different sides of things, and also people standing often with the people that are on the wrong end of the power equation, the marginalized, people that are not the preferred inhabitants of any community, people that people often would like to move out of sight. On my father's side, he worked with the tribe, I think I shared this perhaps before, the Tswana people, and his nickname was Ramosa, which means good father, improving their living conditions. That was his life's work. My mother was a social worker, doing what a social worker, a good social worker, is supposed to do. And looking at my own history, I walked away from one of the plum jobs in my denomination to work with the African indigenous churches, churches that were regarded by the established European churches as often devil worshippers or syncretistic people that had practices that bordered on witchcraft. And perhaps it was because my father was an anthropologist and that I was immersed in different cultures quite often from the time that I can remember. I opted with other people to start a college, a training college for the indigenous churches of Southern Africa. Then it was an immigration process for me, a journey from South Africa to Florida, then to Vermont, and then back to the immigrant community in Auckland, New Zealand, where I qualified as a teacher and where I worked by choice in a Decile 1 school. I don't know if you're familiar with that terminology. Decile is, in New Zealand, used to categorize and rank the average income of the community that that specific school serves. Now, Decile 1 is the lowest rating. So that's the school that all teachers try to avoid, because for those schools to survive, they often go for the subsidies that go with a child that has problems. The child with the most problems get the most help from the government, so it's a nice deal for a school. There's a lot of dollars assigned to this child. And the school where I taught was the school with the highest percentage of problem children in the whole of New Zealand. It was a Catholic Maori boarding school. Tough crowd to work with, but very interesting kids, and I had many moving experiences with them. Coming back here, I, for a long time, was wondering, why did I return to the US? Because it's changed so much in the 6 years that we were in Auckland. And the biggest thing that changed, I shared on a Memorial Day when they asked me to speak in front of the library on that little square, where I said civility is gone from the public sphere. And if we don't relearn to speak to each other in a respectful way, it will not be God bless America, but God help America for the years to come. What I discovered was that, and without getting prematurely pious, I want to say what I think, what moves me and what God's Spirit moves in me is that standing with the marginalized and trying to heal and to reconcile, which is in my genes, which is part of my whole life's journey. And that I discovered trying to get distance between myself and my living of every day, trying to draft this proposal, taking time out from myself and the hurrying and the running that I'm entitled or inclined to do. And what was for me a revelation was that is also part of the core character of our church. Perhaps a surprising find for me, but that is what I experience and what I see, what people respond to in the ministries that we embrace and the ministries that emerge and the ministries that are growing. Apart from feeding the poor and assisting in many ways to help the poor, there is also a dedication to serving the immigrant community. RIM, Refugee Immigration Ministry, that has always been part, or not always, but for a long time at least, part of the character of this church, the core ministries. Our immigration forum, the help to the Syrian refugees. Then another marginalized community, those with mental health issues. That also emerged. And then lately, or actually over the past 4 years, a continuous work done by many of us to try, in an era of division, to stand in the breach and to try and bring people together, to find common ground, to talk to each other, and to embrace together what is good, as we are doing with the Conversation Cafe now for this community. That, I think, is sacred work. And I have, for a very long time, not experienced the peace that I have around my work here and where I think God's Spirit is nudging this congregation and also nudging me to continue to go. And that is what I'll put in my proposal. Try to fit it into 23,000 words or characters. Because I believe that is also at the heart of what Jesus taught us. That words from John the Baptizer sounds to me like a major infrastructure project. You know, make the highway for the Lord. Fill up the valleys, prepare the road. There we go. And then the words of Jesus, characterizing, according to the author of the Gospel of Luke, what he characterizes or how he saw his work. That unconditional acceptance, the meritless acceptance of the marginalized, the poor, the oppressed, the ones that perhaps have given up on hope, the ones that experience themselves as not worthy of the love of society and therefore also not the love of God, the ones that are problematic and do not fit into the neat categories that we like to design. You know the people I'm talking about. But in that, I think there is also salvation for us and grace for us to know and experience that God's Spirit is guiding us and leading us to also arrive at the point where we can accept ourselves and where we can be part of that kingdom that Jesus spoke about. That condition and that situation which emerges when God's love determines what is done and how it is done. It is at the heart of the congregational tradition to be democratic. It is our sacred right, we think, to decide for ourselves what we do, and it is our sacred right to also decide what we don't want to do. And it is at the heart of the United Church of Christ, the congregational ethos, to say no governing body, no higher-ups speak for us. They can speak to us, but they don't speak for us. This is very similar to the denomination that I was brought up in which I was ordained originally. Very similar. And I often said to my colleagues who were often angry about stuff, you know, this is not right, and they were ready to go to war for some minute thing on the margins of what I think the church should really be busy with. And then I used to say to them, yeah, it's also your sacred right to make a fool out of yourself. which didn't go down very well. But for us as United Church of Christ, let us decide for ourselves, looking toward the future. Is this the direction we want to go? Is this at the heart of who we are? Let us talk to each other. Let us continue this conversation, and above all, let us be open from here on. To guide each other through the Spirit's guidance in us to arrive at what our calling is. Because we can differ about many things. We can, as I've jokingly said also, embrace the sacred privilege to make a fool out of ourselves sometimes, which is okay. It's our right to do that. But let us be clear on one thing. We do not have the right to decide for the Spirit what the kingdom looks like. That is clear in the teachings of Jesus. That is clear in everything that he taught and everything that he lived. And let us together embrace that. And let us continue to allow ourselves the privilege to differ about things on the margin, but on the core, let there be clarity for us. And may we as a congregation, and especially in our relationship, experience some of that clarity and the peace that I experienced after this exercise of thinking about that proposal for my sabbatical. Let us walk on that road, that journey that John the Baptizer spoke about and that Jesus taught us about. That is the way that we should walk in. The way as the early Christian church was known. Simply the way of Jesus. And let us journey together into that future. Amen.